the reality is the industry needs people, and it's not just today, it's next year and in 10 years and in 20 years. If we don't have a functional Farm Manager Apprenticeship Programme with really strong farmers who are driving it, well, then we're not actually going to train good people for the future. So it is really, really important, from an individual farm perspective, but also from a whole industry perspective and, the whole future generations and that generational renewal.
I'm joined this week by Emma-Louise Coffey, Programme Co-Ordinator for the Farm Manager Apprenticeship Programme. Emma-Louise joined us to discuss why skilled young farmers are important for the industry and what the Farm Apprenticeship course can offer both host farmers and aspiring young dairy farmers. So thanks for joining us, Emma-Louise.
Great to be with you today, James.
A familiar, I was going to say a familiar face, but a familiar voice to a lot of our listeners, obviously.
Strange to be at this side of the mic, but sure, we'll give it a go.
The tables have turned. I suppose maybe to start, and we spoke about the need for skilled young farmers and farm managers, Emma-Louise. Why is that so important within the dairy industry?
Yeah, thank you, James. In advance of this conversation, I was looking at the National Farm Survey report from last year, and I suppose the age profile of our farming population is quite stark. If we look at the average age of a farmer in Ireland, it's set at 58 years of age. And you could say the average doesn't tell us a lot. But if we look at that, our younger farmers, 5% of our farmers are under the age of 35 at the moment, with 33% or 1 in every 3 farmers over the age of 65. Now, if we consider the age of 65, in a lot of industries and jobs, that's your retirement age. So, I suppose there's a challenge there. The average farmer at 58, slightly younger for dairy, 4 years younger than the total average at 54 years of age. But I suppose regardless, the number in terms of age is presenting a challenge. And let's moving away from the numbers, what does that mean in practice? Who's going to work the land in the future? Who's going to run farms and milk our cows, I suppose, is a question and the challenge we talk about. Words like succession and generation renewal are hot topics. But when you refer to the young, skilled farmer, where is that person going to come from? And part of the solution will lie within the family farm succession piece, somebody who is within the family. So your son or your daughter, niece or nephew, that traditional method of family transfer that we would have seen in Ireland. But I suppose there is a big gap and there's need for more people. It's probably evident, particularly since the abolition of quotas. But, there's hired labour on farms, be it farm operatives, farm managers, but also now, and again, as I say, since the abolition of milk quotas, we're seeing more and more collaborative farming arrangements. So that young skilled person coming into a business and being involved in the business, be it a registered farm partnership, a lease, a share farm. But we need that skilled person to do it, who engages in ag training and agricultural education. Having an attractive industry for those people to come into. Farming is no different to other industries. Our country is at almost full employment. So people have so many options. So it is for us to be flying our flag and being as attractive, if not more attractive, to people, within the family or, that non-farm owner, that young person to come in and to engage with the industry and get involved in farm businesses.
Because I would have heard it, you mentioned it there in terms of succession and generational renewal and the need for young people was evident conversation at the recent Moore Park Open Day. There's the industry-wide challenge, but then there's challenges at local level, at individual commercial farm level as well. What are Teagasc offering in that space in terms of, to train this next generation of dairy farmers, dairy farm managers? Because as you said, there is going to be lots of opportunity for young people in the industry over the coming years.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I suppose there's a lot of routes for people to get into farming. So I hope you don't get lost as we go through it, but typically somebody who is, 17, 18 years of age, has done the Leaving Cert or has maybe come out of school early and is working on farms would typically engage with full-time education programs. So the level 5 and 6 courses, so they're 1 year each, so 2 years within an ag college in Ireland. And there are 6 colleges that provide that education. Kildalton College, Clonakilty, Ballyhaise up in your neck of the woods, Mount Bellew, Pallaskenry, and Gerteen. So they're dotted across the country. And, the education piece there's classroom learning, there's practical skills on the college farms, and then there's also placement periods where they would go for a significant block of time out to farm, typically in the springtime, to to put the theory that they're learning in the classroom into practice. Um, Once they finish that, there's the opportunity to go further. And some of these, once they've completed their level 6, they will engage with the course I'm working on, the farm management course, in order to do another 2 years of full-time education. Now, when I say full-time education, it looks very different. So they will be based on a farm. I suppose the earn while you learn model. They're going to spend at least 80% of their time on the farm, and then they would come away from the farm unit and come into the college setting, either in Kildalton College or Moore Park, to do college days in and around 3 to 5 days per month, with that model. I'm going to really complicate it now, and say that the apprenticeship model has now been developed for the level 6, the level 5 and 6. So there is a level 6 farm technician apprenticeship. So you can actually do 4 full years. You're working on the farm, and then you're coming away from the farm for short periods of time, that 3 to 5 days per month, in order to get your education piece, while at level 6, developing your skills and knowledge, and obtaining your green cert, and then opting to continue on to that level 7, to further develop your knowledge, your skills, and develop the management capabilities to run a farm.
Tell us a little bit, because and maybe how it differs. The farm manager apprenticeship course differs to some people. Maybe our listeners might be aware of the professional diploma in dairy farm management that was there. So how do they differ? And I suppose outline the main elements of what's involved.
So broadly, very similar, James. Like, for anyone who knows the professional diploma, as you mentioned, it is our old system that ceased to exist in 2024, with the farm manager apprenticeship totally taking over. I guess from an education perspective, somebody who completes the apprenticeship, you will get a full level 7 Bachelor of Science in Farm Management. So from a qualification perspective, you have the equivalent qualification if you completed your level 7 at a technological university. But that would have been more classroom based, safe, full-time lectures with a small amount of placement. Um, with the PDDFM, the old system, it would have been a slightly lesser award. It would have been a minor level 7. So I suppose it would limit your progression if you wanted to continue your education further. Practically, for the apprentice on the ground, you're spending 80% of your time on farm. So you come away from your farm for 40 days of block release or college days in the year, and that is for your education piece. And it is to, I suppose, tie in the practice on farm, why you're doing them, how it links to science and best practice. And also then the remainder of your time that you're off farm is your annual leave entitlement. Um, I suppose another difference is that in the old system, you would have spent a year on one farm and then you move to a different farm. With the new system, you will stay on the one farm for the full 2 years of the program. And finally, then, and probably one of the biggest operational differences from the apprentice and the farmer perspective, we do not place a student on a host farm. Now the apprentice will select the farm that they want to work on. So they typically go to the Generation Apprenticeship website, and they will gain employment with a farmer, and then they come to Teagasc to sign up to do the education piece. So I suppose that would be the key difference, from a practical perspective, getting set up.
So the host farmer and the apprentice really have come together at that point, Emma-Louise.
That's it, yeah. And I suppose it is the opportunity for both the apprentice and farmer to be more selective. So a common trend now in the last couple of years is a lot of apprentices would want to remain close to home. So they're kind of saying 30 minutes is their max commute. They want to maybe live at home. So with that, you can be selective in terms of your location. Herd size, cow type, farm system, those kind of things. They can actively seek out exactly the specific farm they're looking for. And, a comment recently from a host farmer at a farmer briefing meeting, we had a farmer sitting on the panel and he said, every September you got a new student if there was one available to you, but you never knew what was coming. Whereas now you were doing the vetting process as the farmer, you're having the interview, so you're saying yes or no to the person that's coming to you.
And you mentioned there maybe a platform where people can come together. Obviously, there'll be some of these arrangements where they'll be local. The individuals may know one another, and they happen relatively straightforward.
Yeah.
But then there's going to be cases where is it the host farmers that you see that are looking for the apprentices, or is there apprentices looking for host farmers, or how do people that's interested maybe engage in that process? Because the fact that you have to have a host farmer or you have to have apprentice on board, there's obviously a bit of work that needs to go into that.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different avenues in terms of where the learner is coming from. So the typical person who is coming to engage with this course has done their level 5 and 6. So we're meeting them in the Ag College in the autumn and spring ahead of them finishing up their level 6. There's a lot of them would have a very good rapport with the person that they did their level 6 placement with, and they say, I'd love to continue working with them. And if that farmer is successful in applying to become an approved employer, that is totally achievable. I suppose on existing farms, there is also scope. We would see that there might be somebody who's working in a kind of a farm operative role on a farm, and they are wanting to, I suppose, step up the ladder, gain more experience, have more responsibility on farm. Or indeed, the farmer might be saying, you have a lot of potential. I'd love to see you grow further within my farm business. So they can actually come to Teagasc and say, we want to sign up. And, I already have an apprentice or I already have the farmer to do so. And they can go through the process of signing up as an approved employer. But I suppose from a farmer perspective, if you want to engage with this program and you'd like to employ somebody through the apprenticeship program, really, I suppose, firstly, you need to look at yourself technically and, are you good to measure what's happening on your farm? Simple things like your grass measurement. Are you engaging with ICBF to analyze your herd, milk recording, those kind of things? And then are you doing a financial analysis? Typically something like the profit monitor. And if you're meeting those criteria, it's very much a really good learning environment for somebody where they can, benchmark the farm. So, you can sign up then as an approved employer, and where you become approved, you can advertise yourself on the Generation Apprenticeship website. So anybody in Ireland or actually even across the whole world, we have 2 apprentices at the moment from the Philippines. We have international learners within the program, but you were visible then, and anybody can apply to you in order to do the program.
That was my question, and you have covered off some of it. Host farmers, what's required? So there's obviously a level of efficiency required. Is there certain criteria? You mentioned grass measuring there. Is there certain criteria that the host farmer must meet in order to be eligible?
Yeah, so I guess the first thing is that the farm is a safe place to work, and that health and safety piece, because naturally that would be a fundamental. But from a technical perspective, the thing I mentioned there about that short list, grass measurement, and what you'd be looking at is a minimum of 30 measurements a year the herd plus, and things like the milk recording within that, that there is data for the whole farm, and then there's also individual cow data, and then your financial analysis. One other element of the farm is that the farm is a member of a discussion group, ideally one that an apprentice can attend. And if not, that there is encouragement and there is evidence of the apprentice going to farm walks, be it your open days, your co-op days, that there is exposure to best practice technical farming, outside the farm gate, as well as what you're seeing day to day on farm.
Um, Why would a host farmer get involved, Emma-Louise? Like, would it not just be as easy to go and hire somebody full time?
It would absolutely, James, and even some of our old host farmers from PDDFM are opting not to engage with the program. It's obviously totally up to an individual farmer, but I guess what are your staff bringing to the farm? And if I look at our apprentices, they are bringing a huge amount of skill and knowledge to the farm. And also, when they get off farm to do their college days, who are they engaging with? So there's an integrated team in Teagasc that are supporting this program. So you mentioned that, I'm program coordinator. I have some colleagues in Kildalton, in education who are supporting the program. But there's also some of the top researchers in the country, but you could also argue in the world, such as the, I suppose, interest and demand for their knowledge, and also our advisory and specialist staff in Teagasc. So there's exposure to people in all elements of the organisation who are really looking at best practice in farming. With the criteria that I mentioned to you, the purpose of that is that you look at farms, and I would argue maybe no farm in the country is totally textbook perfect, and we're dealing with an evolving environment. But we look within this course at every aspect of a farm business, and we're looking to see how do we improve it. So when an apprentice leaves a farm, they come in for 3 to 5 days of college in the month, and they will look at several aspects of the farm and benchmark their farm. And, where they're not at target, you're looking at strategies to improve. And, where there's a meaningful engagement when an apprentice returns to the farm after block release, there can be huge improvements in farm businesses. Now, some people might have heard this before and you might be sick of examples, but there's little things like we will go through milk recording results, and depending, like there's even some farms that have an average cell count of below 200,000, but there are problem cows from a cell count perspective in that herd. Where you can improve that, it can be a 10,000, 20,000 plus euro improvement in the farm per year. And that's just one example. Grassland management, production utilization, improving 6-week calving rates. They're all very basic things, in theory, but why isn't the farm at target performance? Is there some gap in knowledge? But, these apprentices are providing that gap in knowledge. I suppose outside of that, with the apprenticeship structure, this apprentice is signing up to you for 2 years. So there's a huge element of continuity in terms of your staff, your workforce, across a 2-year period and potentially beyond.
And it's that, as you said, potentially beyond. It's that longer term development of your staff, of your future farm manager. It's maybe taking a longer term look at farm labour than just a short term kind of maybe filling the season or a period of the season, Emma-Louise, isn't it?
Absolutely, and you do see that where there are a lot of the graduates, particularly of the PDDFM. We only have our first graduates from the Farm Manager Apprenticeship. Right now, they're finishing up on farms, but there are a lot of people who would have stayed within the farm systems or would have went into some form of a venture, on another farm, with the farms that they would have worked with, their host farmers, and now they're mentors. And it's an interesting point you touch on too, James, and not to get too philosophical about it, but the reality is the industry needs people, and it's not just today, it's next year and in 10 years and in 20 years. And the reality is apprenticeships are industry led. And if we, what does that mean from the farm manager apprenticeship? We need our farmers in the country to support it. Because if we don't have a functional farm manager apprenticeship program with really strong farmers who are driving it, well, then we're not actually going to train good people for the future. So it is really, really important, from an individual farm perspective, but also from a whole industry perspective, and, the whole future generations and that generational renewal.
And as an aspiring young dairy farmer, why would they get involved? What skills will they develop? Why should they be making contact with the course or engaging with the course, with the opportunities of getting involved?
Yeah, I would say it's essential for anybody who is hoping to have a career in farming and planning to have a career in farming. Um, I suppose what are they getting from it? You mentioned that's the first thing. Well, I think it's in a very attractive model in that they are gaining their qualification while they're earning. So they're actually probably earning as much as if they were a normal staff member on a farm in a lot of cases, maybe sometimes even more. There's a continuity of work, and there is a massive amount of skill and knowledge development. They finish their level 5 and 6. I'm going to say typically they're around 20 years of age. To go home directly farming, that's totally fine, and people do it. But there is still a lot of experience and knowledge to gain, and you're doing, while you're earning money. There's also a confidence piece there that I would say is very important. We would traditionally have done entrance interviews with the old system, and when they finish up after 2 years, they'd complete an exit interview. And to see the development over those 2 years is just absolutely phenomenal. And that is really, really important. And part of that confidence is going home to they say the older generation on the farm, and having a really adult conversation about, I don't know, is that good enough, or how can we improve that? And to have the conversation and bring everybody along to improve what you're doing on the farm, because as I mentioned, no farm is perfect, and every farm has room for improvement. I guess they're earning while they're out on farm, and they're, I suppose, developing their ability to be involved in the industry, be involved in their discussion group. They have the confidence to give their opinion, host a discussion group, in their future farming career. Because I think as well as anyone, James, our industry is changing. Like, what was the industry 10 years ago is so different to what it is now. The challenges, the whole environmental piece, and it's to be able to be in a good discussion group and be able to keep up with all of that once you finish your college is really, really important going forward.
And that blend, as you say, like, people want to be dairy farmers because they're on farm, they're working outside, and that is the majority of this 2 year program. But it's those other elements, those block releases, those few days where you have access, as you say, to the most expert people in different spaces to really bolster your knowledge and develop your skills as a young farmer. Maybe to finish up, how can people find out more about the course, and is there specific deadlines that people should know about that are maybe interested in getting involved?
Yeah, so I suppose there's a lot of ways to get information. The Teagasc website has a lot of it. There's I suppose a landing page, but then there's also links for information if you want to become an employer or if you want to become an apprentice. So there's information there. I am contactable. My details are on the Teagasc website. I also have two colleagues. We have the National Apprenticeship Officer, Marcella Phelan, and also my colleague Kevin Brennan, who's working on this specific program with me, the Farm Manager Apprenticeship. I would also say that, I suppose the partner and the governing body of all apprenticeships in the country is Solus, and they are also contactable if people have more questions. That is another avenue. But I would say if people are in doubt or they have questions, come and talk to us. There's also actually one very good on Teagasc YouTube. There was an apprenticeship webinar last spring, so spring of 2024, and we had one of our farmers who is employing an apprentice, and our apprentice would have been profiled on that. So there is some useful information there too, if people want to check that out. And I can share that with you, James, to include on the show notes.
Lovely. Appreciate that, and good to talk to you again, Emma-Louise.
Thank you, James.
That's it for this week's episode of the Dairy Edge podcast. My thanks to Emma-Louise Coffey for joining me on this week's show. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. You can listen on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And for more information, go to the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie. I'm James Dunne, and join us next time for your Dairy Edge.